All right, as I've been doing, I want to go over the activities because we are now in the what I know now discussion. Um, that is a takeoff from what you knew in week 2. So the intent here is to see if you have, this is one of Dr. Bird's, see if your thinking has evolved, if it's changed at all. As I recall from your excellent first blush at this question, you were realizing that there might have been more to this than you realized from your classroom view. Certainly legitimate, makes great sense to me. It also tells me why we take these courses, right? So that we can become a little bit more aware of what's happening in other offices and other buildings in our district. So the what I know now is a evolving point of view, all right? Let me give you a tip about the next one, the school law quiz. I put that together. I didn't want to have you reflect on it. It's questions that come out of the PowerPoints. So here's my suggestion to you. Well, we have Chelsea's senior class portrait. I suggest that you take a look at the school law quiz before you start looking at the PowerPoints. And then when you go through the PowerPoints, oh, that's what that is. Or that's what he's asking. So just a way of me checking for understanding. And let's be honest, my way of holding you accountable, because you've got to watch the PowerPoints, which I'm going to, with you next week, I'm going to go through it. So there's another thing you might want to just have it open as we go through it. You might be able to answer the questions just while we go through it next week. All right. Okay, so that's where we're at with those. And Abby, there's no confusion for you as to what the activities are and how they play into one of your final grades, right?
Yeah, I think I'm good with everything. I'm caught up to week 7 now, I think.
Very
so.
Good. Oh, and by the way, Abby, and any of the rest, I didn't answer some of your more recent discussions, Abby, because my cat stepped on my keyboard and I couldn't use it.
Fine. I'll take that as an excuse.
It's the only one I got. The best.
No, it's all good. I'm happy you didn't respond because my brain's like going through everything crazy. So it's good.
Frankly, they might let someone else into the program even now at week 7. So I guess the thinking is that it's asynchronous learning. You can, if you finish it in time, you get it done. I think it has something to do with the numbers too, to try to increase the numbers, but I understand.
It can be done, but I spent many hours every day for the last week.
Let's be honest, you got to pay the bills, and the schools,
that's right.
Somebody's got to pay the bills as well. All right, intended learning outcomes. Candidates will be able to articulate the role of various levels of education leadership and their impact on student learning. I'm going to introduce you to resources here. This is not going to be a lot of theory. This is going to be a lot of practice. Taking off from my experience when I was a building principal and I was first given the keys, I told you my life story. I didn't have enough basic information about what I was supposed to be doing. And that didn't have to be. And I don't want you to be in that situation. So whether you're a building principal or a superintendent, at some point in time, you're going to have to lead a school through through a process, a strategic plan to improve student achievement. All right. And that's all going to be about aligning your curriculum instruction and your assessment along with your student support services, your technology, etc. And so given that you're going to have to do that, the only way to maximize student achievement is to align these things and to be efficient with your time and not be wasting anyone's time, and primarily your students. You need to know where the resources are that are going to help you align. And that's what this is about, pointing out to you the resources that you may or may not have visited as a classroom teacher. All right. And from what I know about most of your background so far, a lot of this may be new, not all of it, but some of it will be new. All right. There's really 4 parts to this. All right. We'll talk about a rationale, why alignment is important briefly. And then we're going to get into aligning standards the New York State standards to curriculum, to modules, to instructional rubrics, all right, to assessments, to support services, to technology, all right? And because our big brother here is New York State, obviously, all right, we have to align to it. High stakes testing. Answer that question for me. What is it about New York State that makes alignment with New York State Education Department and policies and laws in New York State so important? Why must we align to them? It's our public schools, locally controlled. We have a Board of Education. Why does the alignment matter so much that it's to New York State?
Is it funding?
Funding, certainly our funding is driven by student achievement. One might say in the inverse, right, Jared? The worse we do, the more needy we become.
And the assessments.
That's real important. We refer to them as what kind of assessments in New York State?
Summative.
Yes, summative, high stakes is where I'm going. Absolutely. There's so much riding on the degree to which we align with our instruction and curriculum to assessments. All of you're still being evaluated according to APPR? Sure are. Even in these COVID times, we're not really sure what it's going to look like, but they still got to send in those numbers, all right? So the high stakes tests are being driven, all right? It's true, aid is being driven by student achievement as well, all right? The degree to which people move into your community. Business First just came out with its ranking, didn't it? This past May again. That's a local business magazine, Jared, in Western New York, where they rate our public schools. People choose to live where they want to live based upon whether or not they have good schools or not. You know where they're moving. They're moving into well-to-do, rich, white neighborhoods, if they can afford it. It perpetuates the same thing. All right? Brian, someone please close the mic. We got feedback. Brian knows that people are more tend to move if they have money into Fredonia than they do Dunkirk, because Fredonia is whiter. Fredonia is more well-to-do. Fredonia has better real estate. And the kids in Dunkirk, well, they're brown. They speak Spanish. All right. Their parents and their grandparents and great-grandparents were immigrants and migrant workers. The housing stock is cheaper. That's how we do it in America. All right. So we're going to talk about alignment because there's so much high stakes riding on student achievement. We got to get it right. And also just for the sake of it's a moral obligation to give the kids the best we possibly can. So we're talking where to locate the resources. And last week we talked about your respective roles as principals or superintendent. Remember the smiley thing, smiley survey? There's certain things a superintendent will do, certain things a principal will do. Sometimes they cross, those paths cross. Oftentimes they are different, all right? And you need to know the difference between the two. Remember, this is an intro course too. So I just want to revisit the purpose. This introductory course designed to provide you with an overview. We're not going to get into great detail, but I hope you will expand upon some of these concepts. With this in mind, the following contents we're going to provide you with basic information. The goal is to align curriculum structure, student support services, etc., because we want to work towards congruence and dissonance. Define those two terms for me, if you would. What's define congruence? To be congruent. If you're a math teacher, you know what congruent means. What's congruence mean?
Does it mean like on the same plane or equal?
Yeah, congruent triangles, right? Same angle. Congruent. You're a coach. You want your team, all your kids to have a congruent or an identical or a same or a similar view of the playbook, right?
Absolutely.
Certainly don't want dissonance, because dissonance implies what?
I'd say the lack of harmony.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lack of harmony. Everybody's working at cross purposes. All right. Kindergarten teachers are doing something different than the first grade teachers, doing something different than the third grade teachers. All right. Remedial educators are doing something different than the classroom teachers' approach to reading. Special education teachers, incongruent or dissonant with the regular education teachers. It's a waste of time. It brings up issues, however, of equity. Answer me that. What does equity have to do with alignment? Providing students with an equitable education.
I was gonna answer.
Now you got to answer, Chelsea. You hog the microphone.
That was like perfect timing. That's like they knew. But I was gonna say, like equal access to everyone for everything.
Yeah, equal and equitable access. Equity being a little bit different, but you're right. All right.
It holds everybody to the same standard, so we're not holding those that we're not using like implicit bias to hold some people to lower standards.
Exactly. Because in our country we still have a problem with that, don't we? Kids don't get an equitable education in this country. The two communities I mentioned, and I'm not disparaging either one because I love both Fredonia and Dunkirk, I truly do. And because they're different, but there's a railroad track that divides the two communities. And they're not getting an equitable education for a lot of different reasons. Parent support, let's not forget that, all right? The amount of resources you can have in a household, all right? But a lot of it has to do with zip code and where you live and the color of your skin and the amount of money in your back pocket. And one tends to equate to the other. But you're right, equity matters. And within a school, you don't want teachers, so Chelsea's an excellent third grade teacher and Nate is not so good, and I'm being kind. Kids coming out of Nate's third grade, going into fourth grade, are at a distinct disadvantage. Kids coming out of Chelsea's classroom, because she's a hotshot third grade teacher, they're in a much better position because she was much more aligned to the district's program. And Nate, well, he's just taking the kids swimming. That's all he's doing. He's waiting for the bell to ring so he can get in his swimming trunks and get in there. You get my point. Even within buildings, it can be inequitable if we don't pay attention to these issues. In the book Literacy Leadership, Rosemary, and that is spelled right, Taylor and Valerie Doyle Collins write that to many school leaders, creating a curriculum system, aligned curriculum, structured learning tools, and assessment, they sound like an esoteric exercise that has little to do with real schooling. But this task takes on significant meaning when we view it as a way to provide school leadership for streamlining and simplifying the work of teachers, while also ensuring that all students have equal access to a high-quality curriculum. What could be more important? It's a moral imperative, which gets us back to ethics, if you will, and how everything really builds upon how ethical we really are in the jobs that we do. This equal access results from an officially aligned curriculum available to all students and from daily school-wide incorporation of literacy processes and strategies that will help all students learn that curriculum. When all students have the same kind of equal access, both achievement and standardized test results will improve. When that improves, you have a better workforce in your community, more responsible citizens, people who want to participate in the democratic process. People put their new Amazon fulfillment centers not on Grand Island, but on the east side of Buffalo to give jobs to a community that doesn't have jobs, because you raise the capital, the intellectual capital in that community. We can have such a profound effect on communities when we can get it right. All right, breaking those cycles of poverty. An aligned curriculum system will result in more efficient and effective daily teaching. I think this is real important. I always pitied that poor special ed kid or that poor resource room kid. All right, think of a little boy who can't read very well. So he's in a group with a classroom teacher and he's learning how to learn in that method that teacher used. And then the teacher comes and pulls them out for the next 45 minutes and puts them in her classroom. And now she's using a different method entirely. And now he's got to switch gears and try to think how this other teacher's doing it. And so kids who already have cognitive delays, if you will, all right, and trouble comprehending one style, then they've got to move to another style. Wouldn't it be nice if they were aligned? Saving time and energy on the part of that kid and the classroom teachers, that's what we need to be striving for. Where I want us to start the discussion is with the basics. Make sure we understand what we're talking about. Let's define standards, all right? Standards indicate what students should know. You notice that whenever I start these classes, I talk about the standards, the learning outcomes we're looking towards. Because back to high stakes, Jared, you all know what things like CAPE are, right? You know that the universities have to get accredited. And they have to go through a dog and pony show and show that the standards that are released by the research institutions like NELP, all right, that those standards are being taught to and assessed, and they have to show results on those tests. Otherwise, you can't get you can't get accredited. So it's the same thing at the post-secondary level as well. All right. So I try to remind myself all the time of the standards to which I'm supposed to be teaching, and those standards then typically nationally recognized, statewide adopted, Common Core. All right. Curriculum then comes from those. You all know that. Those are your basic methods courses, right? You know, about knowledge, skills, and attitudes and abilities. Tell me the difference to make sure we're talking about the same thing here. We're congruent. What's the difference? What's vertical alignment and what's horizontal alignment in terms of curriculum instruction? What are the two concepts that imply? Take them one at a time. What's vertical alignment? What does that mean?
One grade to the next.
Exactly. Vertical, one grade to the next. Thank you, Chelsea. And on that same topic, Chelsea, you want to stay with and tell me what's horizontal alignment imply?
Within one grade level, but through units.
Very good. Within a grade level. So all horizontal would be all the third grade teachers are aligned, which doesn't mean doing everything exactly the same every day, of course, right? Because you have academic freedom and different styles, but that you're at least adhering to certain agreed upon by all of you standards, power standards, for instance, the most important standards, and preferably a locally developed curriculum that's tailored to the needs of your particular kids and the resources you have, but it's aligned across the third grades, all right? Or amongst all the ninth grade ELA teachers in the building. Vertical, of course, as the vertical implies, it's between grades, moving up K through 6, 7 through 12, that there's alignment, all right? We want to strive for that. Let me ask you this question. Where do we typically find vertical alignment breaking down?
Intermediate to secondary or elementary to secondary.
Yeah, wherever there's basically a geographic disruption, right? Between buildings. So getting back to last week, thanks, Jared. Getting back to last week, let's say you've got three elementary, I'm a small school super, okay, 3 elementary buildings, a middle school, and a high school. What could a superintendent do to promote alignment between the 3 elementary buildings and the middle school? What's the superintendent's role, for instance? Could bring some others in here?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. We've got 3 elementary buildings, a middle school and a high school in this scenario, Jared. The question is, recognizing, as you said, that we find the breakdown in vertical alignment happening between buildings And usually when kids transition, maybe 4th grade elementary building to 6th grade middle school, for instance. All right, that's where the breakdowns typically occur, because they do. Jared's right. What could a superintendent's role, what would be a superintendent's role to diminish or to promote more vertical alignment between the elementary buildings and the middle school? What could he do? What could she do?
And staff days, could she make like all of one content area work together? Maybe partner up high school and middle school, like a high school or middle school teacher, a secondary teacher with an elementary teacher to talk about what they do in their classroom.
That's a good example. And while I'm explaining that, think of the next question to be: what could the 3 elementary principals do to promote that alignment? Horizontally, to promote a vertical alignment. Back to Kelly's point. Yes, create structures, allocate time, right? If you will, dictate the agenda, Kelly. Be rather authoritative on this, and don't give people the choice, but say, we're recognizing that this is a problem. You've identified it as a problem. Our achievement results are showing this as a problem. I'm going to require that you spend at least half of the day on Superintendent's Conference Day doing this. Remember, by the way, when I was talking about different types of management and leadership styles, they vary depending on the circumstances. There are times when you're not going to say, what would you like to do? All right? You're going to say, this is what we're going to do. All right? Case in point.
Could the superintendent turn it into like a PLC or something?
Superintendent can create the environment or the structures where PLC can take place. Agree to negotiate PLC leaderships positions in the contract. All right, kind of a lead teacher. It could be voluntary, of course, also, Brian, but you asked about what could he actually do to promote it. So yeah, get some contract in language that makes it official. Maybe an honorarium that would go along with that. Maybe release time somehow, Brian. All right. So yeah, superintendents, what we control are time and money, because really money is time as well.
I'm also thinking about the coordinator position. If you do have a coordinator, or if you have different superintendents for different levels, you could.
Exactly. Especially if you get large enough where you can start to afford that. Little ones have a hard time with that, but that's where sometimes where TOSAs come in, teaching on special assignment, Jared. That's a nice way to get around that. So maybe you don't have a full-time position, or you want to get someone certified. So you'll go, maybe if you can find a teacher who's really good and become a coach. But yeah, superintendent can identify collaborating with others, because we're certainly not all knowing, but collaborating with others, identifying the problem, and then pulling the levers of power to identify time, money, expertise, build capacity to promote vertical alignment. All right? Be proactive about it. Likewise, the question I put to you is, what could those 3 elementary principals do, first horizontally, in order to promote vertical alignment as they move from 5th grade, say the elementary stops at 4th grade, from the 4th grade into the 5th grade middle school. Middle school's 5, 6, 7, 8. What could those 3 elementary principals do to promote horizontal alignment, eventually leading to better vertical alignment?
Well, I know that in my district, we just worked on curriculum writing projects to work both vertically and horizontally between 1st grade to 5th grade. But as far as moving from 5th to the middle school, I couldn't tell you a single teacher who works in the middle school. So I wouldn't be able to even fathom why or how they do or don't do it.
Yeah, real good example of what goes on all the time. Big, small, suburban, middle size, all the time, Jared. So back to the different roles. Superintendent is the one who can dictate or require activity between buildings and between principals. she can say, no, you will get together and you will come up with a strategic plan for solving the problem Jared just mentioned. Principals, on the other hand, maybe they've got a weak superintendent who doesn't understand vertical alignment or horizontal. They can get together in their weekly principals wrap session and say, you know what we need to do? We need to organize ourselves or align ourselves horizontally. Even if they're not doing it at the middle school, let's do it within our own grade levels. So take the lead, all right? Take the lead. And the roles are a little bit different, but principals also control time and money. Common planning time, all right? Making an extra effort for that. Identifying your workhorses and making sure that they're listened to and paid attention to, all right? So there's things that we can do proactively. It just doesn't happen by chance. Back to your methods classes, this is obviously right. We would have Common Core Learning Standards on the bottom, our foundation. Then we would have a local curriculum. Hopefully, New York State is smart enough to issue modules that we can either adapt or adopt, all right? But then teachers, of course, based upon, these are kind of the agreed upon consensus areas right here, right? We should at least agree here. We should at least agree here, system-wide, what we're going to emphasize and teach. But then we have our individual lesson plans and our individual classroom activities. There's still plenty of opportunity for freedom as a classroom teacher, but we need to be aligned back to this issue about equity and access. So that Nate's 3rd grade lesson plan is based upon modules and curriculum that we all agreed to, comparable to Chelsea's 3rd grade lesson plan, because they're still hearkening back to some agreed upon standards and curriculum. That's what alignment is all about. We talked about this, congruence and dissonance. I thought I had slides on it. Why do we care? Well, for these reasons. We want all our staff, all our students and families and community to all benefit from higher student achievement, all right? And we can do that by eliminating the dissonance and promoting the congruence. What are we aligning? Our curriculum, our instruction, our assessment, student support service, right? Where, horizontally and vertically, when, consistent over time, you know, within a week, within a semester, within a school year, within a high school experience, within a commencement experience, all the way through. Why? To promote values, beliefs, purpose, mission, and vision. And how? By aligning everything, all right? Let's be honest, hard to do. But you know, shoot for 100. Shoot for the best. If you wind up with an 85, good. You're much better off than shooting for an 85 and winding up with a 50. All right. We've talked about some of these. Some of the signs of dissonance. Read this quickly while I take a sip. Notice how it stretches into the community as well. Kids don't do well. We start to lose support in the community. Yeah, look at the Benjamins. All about the Benjamins. We're not voting for that budget. Look at how much it's costing us, and what are we getting? All right, you're not improving the human capital, the intellectual capacity in your community. Employers start to complain about workforce preparation. They move out of your area. They go someplace else. This has a domino effect. So what we're going to do, back to the basics, we're going to take a tour here in the next hour, actually the next 56 minutes. We're going to take a tour into the resources that are readily available to you to get you started, to jumpstart your alignment, all right? Your go-to places. So you can follow along with me if you want, or you can go right to the web pages if you want. I've got screenshots here that are adequate, all right, given the hour we have here. But this will be a roadmap if you ever needed to get back. If you go to nyscd.gov, you're going to find this page. and you're going to find the ribbon with standards and curriculum, and you'll find Next Gen Learning Standards for ELA and math. You click there, you're going to get your first idea about a timeline. That's what we're going to be looking at. It's hard to see, I know, at the bottom here. If you were to go here, you find Next Gen Learning Standards and Assessment Implementation Timeline. Good. I'm a first-year principal or superintendent. I need to know what the heck. What's the timeline? When are they going to start holding us accountable? What do I need to get done and when? The timeline is a real good place to start. This is the most current one. Here we're going to have, it goes back in time as well, but here we're going to have the phased implementation of the next generation learning standards. All right, the next gen. This is going to start to define your workload and your work schedule. Recognize, by the way, you need to visit these things every now and then because they're going to change. And what's going to change now? COVID's going to change some of this. So you need to know that these sources are out there. They're going to hold your feet to the fire. You need to go periodically. I think I went here. You can find individual timelines. If you click down here, you'll get the timeline for ELA. This is the general one, all right? We can get more specific though. You click on either one of those, you will get this timeline. All right, well, it's a little bit more information here. All right, starting with 2018. So you can look back to, oh man, we didn't do any of this. We better get cracking because look what's going to happen in 2026. So this is giving us an idea again about the ELA phasing, raise awareness, build capacity, full implementation. You find the same thing for math. And not just the elementary and middle school, but the high school level as well. What readings are going to be phased in, all right? You secondary folks, 2024, 25, first administration of Algebra 2 Regents. Exam aligned to the New York State Next Gen Mathematical Learning Standards. Oh my God, what are they doing in the middle school? Oh my God, are they going to be ready coming up into the 9th grade? You know what everybody says, 9th grade teachers blame the middle school teachers. Middle school teachers blame the elementary teachers. And what are the elementary teachers, who do they blame? You got it, Brian, parents.
Parents.
All right, we always look, you know, poop flows downhill, as they say. So here's your timetable. And it's giving you some real good rationale as to why you better align with those other buildings that come before you. It's all for you here. Now, they also developed something called roadmaps. Let me take a dipstick here. Have any of you ever visited these pages that I've showed you so far? That's okay. I'm not surprised. Oh, good. Kelly has. Chelsea, did you say something?
Yeah, that's been like my biggest job all year this year, the ELA Next Gen Standards and trying to get teachers on board.
Okay, come on. Put it in. Tell us again what you do. Put it in context. Make it real for us.
So my ELA side of my work is I lead the CLC. So it takes all the regional ELA teachers from our region, which is the Canada.
What's that stand for?
Collaborative Learning Community.
Thank you.
So we meet 4 times a year during the school year. And me and my partner, Sarah, kind of lead it based on whatever's going on that year. But our other part is doing all the standards training. So we have the workshops where the teachers come in. And it's funny because last summer we did so much at BOCES about the Next Gen Standards and getting them started, like this raise awareness, build capacity. And nobody really did it because it wasn't a priority yet. So now this year, everyone's like, uh-oh, can we have training on Next Gen? And we're like, what do you mean? And teachers are like, what's Next Gen? And we're like, that was 2018. You should know that by now. So it's a lot of fun this year. But now COVID bumped us back a year. So is this the new one or the?
Well, this was as of, I prepared this for 650. This is probably about 2 weeks old.
Yeah, so that's probably the new one. They did adjust with COVID, which now gives people more reason to push it back, but don't push it back. It's important.
All right. Kind of gets me back to where I went off. Remember last week, Jared, you weren't here. I apologize for going off the rails last week. We're talking about meetings, but I'm going to come back to it. because this is where you have to drive the agenda. You can't let people just kind of fall into place. Look at what Chelsea said. Oh, that's next year or year after. Building principals, superintendents have to drive this, and that drive it means push it. You got to get behind it and make it happen, because if you don't make it happen, life is going to interfere.
This has not been brought up for ELA once this past year in my school district, which I find shocking.
Every school.
I'm wondering about science too. I mean, science was pushed off. Our timeline's sooner actually.
Yeah.
The earth science, like the regions that I give, is changing, and it was supposed to be 2022 was the first new one, and it was going to be like a bridge year where they gave the old one and the new one, but that's now pushed to 2023. So, and everyone's like, oh good, that buys us another year to do nothing, and I'm like, no, like I've been working on this for 5 years. How are you not like trying to at least incrementally move in that direction? And I'm wondering if you could say as a principal why you might not want to push your teachers to do that, because I haven't really seen principals or superintendents pushing science teachers to do anything about it.
You know, Kelly, I've seen some of the worst offenders to be principals and superintendents. I've sat in training workshops with them, and they've been embarrassing. They've embarrassed me, they've embarrassed others, and they've embarrassed the presenters. Because we're the principals. You can't tell us anything. Worse yet, we're the superintendents. It's really deplorable behavior. It's unprofessional behavior, and I hope that you would not become one of those people. All right?
I'm worried because I feel like it's because like the union pushed back or teachers pushed back so hard that it like made the administration kind of cower to the teacher force. And I'm worried about that personally when I try to, push standards and say this is where we're headed. And I work every day with my colleagues saying like this is why we need to teach them. It's not just because New York State says it. Like this is a better way to learn science.
Thank you for saying that too, because that's absolutely true. It is a delicate balance. So in defense of a superintendent principal who might slow it down, everyone's working in a different environment, a different milieu. And if you're paying attention, you know where the pressure points are and when you can push and when not. So sometimes it's true, you do have to back off and give people some space, but that should never be a habit. It should never be a habit where that's always your first go-to. Oh, don't worry, it's Albany.
Mm-hmm. Could it be possible that some of them, like, this might sound really dumb, but do some of them not know about it? Like, I don't.
Yes, they don't.
Because, like, we get at CA BOCES, we have a very close, I mean, you are at West Valley, so like, we get our superintendents and principals in a room in front of us quite often. I mean, when they can escape from their hectic schools and get there. But I'm wondering, like, if there's principals and superintendents who don't have that, like, constant BOCES meetings happening, could they just not know this is going on? Or
oh, well, yes, that's true. And I've been talking about this recently. In 650, Teresa, you know Teresa Gray, don't you? Mm-mm. Brian, you know Teresa Gray, in my estimation, is the best person regionally on this topic. Her job recently, unfortunately, got eliminated in Dunkirk, but I love Teresa. She taught me so much. Teresa was like you, Chelsea, in Erie too. And she would have her curriculum meetings. Mm-hmm. Some superintendents would go. I would go to them because it was a weakness of mine, and I wanted to be spongy. I wanted to go back and at least pretend I knew what I was talking about. Because someone had to bring back the message. We didn't have a lot of staff that we could let out of the buildings. Someone had to do it. I made the time. I would go to her meetings. Another case in point. We were just talking an hour ago about going to finance meetings. I wasn't the school business official, but I always made sure that I went because I wanted to know something about what was happening. And the only way I could find out is if I trained myself. So back to your point, yeah, because people will stay back. They'll stay in their office. They won't get out. They won't want to work past 4 o'clock. All right. So they won't get it done. And you have to. That's the role you're taking on. If you don't want to do that, then don't take the job. Someone's got to do it, because Chelsea, you're right. They just don't know.
It's
Now,
crazy.
I was an expert in everything. I admit that. But I had a working knowledge of everything because I made sure that I trained myself. And I have plenty of people to thank for that, like Teresa Gray.
Yeah, the resources are there.
Exactly.
Out
Exactly. So maybe they didn't take 614 though either, Chelsea.
there. Maybe not.
Because I'm showing you where to go so that you can be, you know, at least for 10 minutes, the smartest person in the room when you sit down with your people, when you're collaborating with them. At least you know where it's headed. And all you need to say is, by 2026, this is going to happen. And call on your 3 building principals. What are you doing about it? And then hold them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Know enough to be able to delegate and pass the buck on to the right person. All right. We can get even more specific, Jared, to really burn you up. We can get even more specific, because you can go to the roadmap and pay attention to how these roadmaps look a lot like strategic plans. Here's the goal. Oh, by the way, remember we talked about raise awareness, build capacity, and implement? You're going to find that. Here's raise awareness. Here's the goal. Here's the activity, the thing, the strategic plan, the thing you're going to do. Here's who it's been assigned to. And here's the timeline. Smart planning, strategic plan. Albany's laid it out for you. This is a Word document. You could download these documents and adapt them to your own purposes. So obviously the raise awareness level, this is when Chelsea was going to Albany as a part of the SCDN and BOCES and being trained. You're SCDN trained, right, Chelsea? Chelsea is a prime candidate to be a building principal. Yes, the best people who are ready for being building principals are the SCDN trained people, in my estimation, Chelsea. You're some of the best. Notice how she cringed though? I don't think she's ready for that right now. Anyways, so this has been done. This is all supposed to be done. But notice other stakeholder groups and local school districts, you got some checks here. In 1819, you should have conducted presentations at the implementation timeline of the district. They're telling you what to do. And it makes sense. Notice the general headings: raise awareness, capacity building, implementation. So there are like 12 different pages on this telling you everything. Did any of you go to these pages as I'm talking? Oh, good. Are you noticing all the different ones? We don't have time in this class to do that. Otherwise, I'd go through them. But you've got it. There you go. You got a roadmap telling you what you need to get done. All right. Maybe you want to do an assessment. You get your first job as a building principal. Take these in and start asking questions. You want to see people's eyes get big? Start asking questions about these roadmaps when you get your first job. You'll know what you need to do and what not, just by what you find out here. All right. So now we found out the timeline, the roadmaps, what has to get done. They change. COVID's going to change these, but you've been warned. Now we want to know, okay, what about the standards? I can't know all the standards. I'm a building principal or superintendent, but at least I need to have some general ideas how they're organized, what kind of work it's going to take to work on them. All right. So let me at least act like I know what I'm talking about the next time I call my principals together. All right. Where are the standards? Here they are. You can go to Engage New York. You can get them here too. Next Gen Learning Standards. There's more than one way to get to something through Albany. But go to Engage New York, and we're going to find Next Gen Learning Standards, Common Core, Teacher Leader Effectiveness, etc. Well, let's go to Common Core. We're going to find the Common Core Learning Standards. Like I said, more than one way to get there. This is just one way. Go to Common Core Learning Standards. You don't need to know everything about it, but you need to know where to locate those resources. You're the lead educator. You're the building principal. You're the instructional leader, for God's sake. If you're going to take on that mantle and be identified as that, you better know where to find the standards, for God's sake. Now you know. All right?
You know, I want to say that, you know, I think it would, for my staff and my building, I think that it would come across a lot differently if my building principal shared it coming from the state website as opposed to coming from her own sort of ideas. So a lot of times she puts it on herself and says, well, we're going to do this new initiative. And it's like, well, where'd that come from? Meanwhile, we didn't know that it came from the website, but she doesn't give credit to that. She takes the credit. And then it sounds like it's her initiative. And we're like, well, why are we doing this? Well, we're doing it because the state said we have to do it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? It's good to know that she's competent and capable, but look at the first question the staff is asking. Where did this come from? Give me a rationale. Tell me why this matters. Why does it matter? Because we're aligned to New York State. Because we're a high-stakes testing state. Because, as Kelly said, I'm so glad she said it, because the standards are good. Our kids should be knowing these things, all right? We can adjust them locally, all right? We can do that, but we need someplace to start from. We're not that smart that we can write standards. We're pedagogues. We're not researchers, all right? So the standards are out there too for you. And by the way, I just want to make another a leap back to the 6 systems. Remember we talked about that? Telling you that no matter whatever your initiative was, let's say that you want to identify power standards. Chelsea, definition of power standards. What are they? Give me a working definition.
The priority standards. So if you look at the way they're sorted, there's the priority standards and the standards underneath. So those are the ones that you really should be focused on and starting with, and then hit the bottom ones from there.
Right. Because recognition is way too much to do it all at once. So you work collaboratively to identify your power standards. Good. Thank you, Chelsea. So let's say that's your initiative. We're going to work collaboratively. The building principles. The 3 building principles that scenario before, the 3 elementary principals who want to promote horizontal and vertical alignment. Our initiative is going to be, let's identify our power standards. Cool, there's our goal. What do we need? Leadership. Remember leadership? Create the structures. Find the time. Develop the expertise. Maybe you have to give people stipends. Bring in trainers. Provide the leadership. Or in answer to Jared's question, why are we doing this? Articulate through communication what your vision is. Why are we doing this? That's the leadership component. The communication component. Why we're doing this, how we're going to do this, all right? What we expect to gain from it. What you're going to say, to whom, when, why, and using what media. All about communication. How about delivery? Remember, that was all about having an elegant delivery system, something that could be replicated. So if you're going to have building level meetings to define power standards amongst your 3 elementary buildings and then bring them together as a district, well, maybe Brian is an excellent principal. He'll be able to get it done in his building. Kelly, she's not so good. She's a first-year principal. Her capacity is not as great. And Nate's getting ready to retire or go swimming. So you've got different capacities in the building. Whatever the process is that you're setting up to define the power standards, it should be replicable. It should be sustainable. The 3 building principles should be able to carry it off because it's simple and it's elegant. Remember performance? You want to attract people to your system, and you want to keep them. If you name a committee, you want them to stay with the committee because the work is worthwhile. Remember the accountability? If I'm the superintendent and I delegated those 3 principles, I'm damn well better hold them accountable. And I want to see power standards on paper in 60 days. And that's it. And when 30 days rolls by, I'm going to call them up and say, how you doing? And if I really feel like being a jerk about it, when I'm in a public meeting, I'll ask them to report on it in front of the Board of Education. Again, Jared's eyebrows went up. I would never do that, Jared, because I would never put them up in front of the board. But I said if I wanted to be a real pain in the butt. But would I make them do that between each other? Oh, I would do that, Jared. So far, what have you got done, Nate? Make sure that share it now with Brian and Kelly what you've got done, just to put a little fire under his feet. All right, got to drive it. And measurement. How will you know that you've accomplished the task? What are the measurements for the power standards? All right, is it going to be in a memo form? Are you going to dump it into a software program? All right. Is it going to be put into a book? What's the outcome? What's the measurement? That's how the 6 systems work, no matter what you do. They give you guideposts. As we're working from standards to curriculum, does New York help us there too? Absolutely. We can go to New York State standards, back to Engage New York. What do they call it? Engage
New York.
No, you've got some fancy names. Some people call it shorthand. Engage, I think they call it. I bet someone said that during a workshop. And it caught on. You know that Engage New York site? Here are your curriculum. New York developed curriculum for you. It's out there. All right. Here it is. English language arts, mathematics. We can even get a secondary level over here. All right. Those things are out there. You can find curriculum maps. You can get even more specific. You can get into the modules. Chelsea, I'll take advantage. Well, see, can anyone else, what's the difference? Tell me what's the difference between a curriculum and a module in New York State? Chelsea, you'll be my default if we can't get a volunteer. Kelly, you want to take a stab at it?
I'll take a stab at it because I used to be close with the English teacher before Chelsea at Cattaraugus when we adopted the modules for ELA back in like 2013 maybe.
Yep.
So I feel like a module is like a section of the curriculum that has like everything mapped out for what the teacher should say and do in each lesson.
Yeah, they were very prescriptive, and they did not make a lot of friends in the beginning. And if you were an 8th grade teacher and you were handed those modules that were based upon the false notion that children in grades 4 through 7 had received all that preliminary instruction, but they had not, it really was a heavy lift, right? But that's right. So people were adopting or adapting. The modules are still there. Get you on the fast track. You don't have to start from scratch is the whole point of all this. All right? You don't have to start from scratch. 827. Even secondary level curriculum maps and modules. All right? Not for everything. All right? Not for everything, but there is some things. Okay, so those are the resources available for us to align our, let's start from the back end, reverse engineer. Design our lesson plans based upon an agreed upon curriculum / module that was based upon agreed upon power standards that were based upon Common Core standards that were researched across the country and adopted by a number of governors in the US of A. All right, there you go. There's a good alignment. And now you know where to go. All right, Jared, man, you can pull this out at your next faculty meeting, claim it, and you'd be right up your principal's alley.
While making a lot of enemies.
Comes with the territory, Jared, I'm sorry to say. Let me qualify that though. You never make better friends than the ones you make when you're working in schools. It's just the knuckleheads that you're making enemies with. And I never cared if I made enemies out of the knuckleheads. Now, let's move from curriculum, generic term, to instruction relatively quickly. It's not as easy to claim it, but you can, because of APPR, we do want to try to find rubrics that are approved by New York, which can be negotiated with the bargaining units, with the teachers union, the principals union, and hopefully, if we look at them close enough, they too will be aligned to what we value, what we want to assess, all right? Now, quick lesson is that when we had 3012C and then 3012D, APPR laws, New York put out requests for proposals and vendors said, these are our rubrics, our teacher evaluation systems. You can purchase them from us. New York State approved them. They had links to them, all right? Right now, because APPR is on hold, Albany is now putting out new RFPs, but you can still go to the old links. And this, what I have on the screen, is the link to it. You'll come to this old web page. It's still up there. You'll find teacher practice rubrics and principal practice rubrics. If you go into there, you'll come up with these. Well, actually, it's at the bottom of the page. If you scroll down, you'll come here. And here you've got the rubrics that were approved by New York State. These are the ones that show up in your district's APPR plans. If you were to go look at you can go see your APPR plans, by the way. They're hard to understand, but you could go find them. You're going to find these rubrics in there. If we picked one out, all right, a principal rubric and looked at Marzano's, we're going to look at these 5 domains. And so we're going to find out, good. Marzano is stressing the things we want our principals to stress. We're going to assess our principals based upon these things that we value. Data-driven focus, continuous improvement, viable curriculum, cooperation, collaboration, school climate. Good. They're all different, by the way. And so some things emphasize some domains over others. That's particularly acute when you look at some of the teacher rubrics. When we were starting to negotiate our APPRs with our bargaining units, a lot of us were looking closely at the teacher rubrics to make sure that the teacher rubrics didn't simply mention that they were good teachers, but did they get to work on time? Did they fill out reports and get them in on time? Some of the bureaucracy associated with it, because that's where a lot of people would fall short. And we were finding that not all of the rubrics covered all of those topics. We found in Gowanda that Danielson did. Here were the 4 primary domains: planning and prep, classroom environment, instruction, professional responsibilities. And it was this professional responsibilities that helped us out a lot. Because there was coming to school, coming to work on time, getting things done. But it also mentioned all these other things: planning and prep, classroom environment, instruction. And if we started to look at the subcategories, it got even more specific. The things that we wanted to value, aligned to the previous 20 slides. Using assessments and learning, knowledge of content and pedagogy, setting instructional outcomes, demonstrating knowledge of resources, designing coherent instruction, designing student assessments. Notice how those things all play into the alignment of curriculum, instruction, and assessment bailiwick. Got it? So that was one that we naturally were inclined to go towards. NYSET put out a very good one as well. All right. The point being, just don't spin the wheel and choose anyone. Look at it. Determine if it coincides and is congruent with your district's values, what you want to measure, the things you want to hold people accountable for. And if they do, that's the one you want to negotiate. By the way, youngsters, in the old days, we never had to negotiate the teacher practice rubrics or the principal rubrics. Management got to decide. We might collaborate with teachers or principals to determine that, but we had the final say. APPR changed all that. We had to negotiate that. Just a quick history lesson as to what things used to be like. That's why I'm such a brat, Jared, because I used to have a lot more authority when I started this job. A lot of it was taken away as I got older.
When times were good.
Yeah, good old days when you got to be that kind of guy. Assessments. Not a lot to look at here, but the assessment page is important. And for you, future building principals, extremely important, because you're going to find here schedules when assessments are going to be administered, especially your secondary folks who are putting your readings, exam schedules together. You're going to find your administrators' handbooks, which are extremely important, because you can get yourself in big trouble if you don't handle tests properly. You could find yourself in front of the commissioner or a discipline committee if you don't handle tests properly. So you want to make sure that you know what you're supposed to do. This is where you'll find that out at the Office of State Assessment webpage, okay? Okay, so we've looked at curriculum instruction assessment. Let's move to student services, instructional resources, all right? Because those things, I'm finding that these, are, especially student support services, even more demanding these days than in the recent past, because we're starting to recognize that the social and emotional health of our students is so important to their achievement. And back in those good old days, Jared, we didn't pay close enough attention to these things. All right, we just did. Much more content oriented. All right, but now we're recognizing that the neighborhoods our children come from, the families that they come from, the environments that they come from are producing some really important scars on their personality that it's our jobs to try to heal. So social, emotional, student support services is important. That's where we're going to go now, quickly. You don't have to go here, but if you want to at least get a head start, if you go to state ed and you put in student support services, you will come away with la-di-da, a web page, a search result for student support services, and there is a web page. Notice some of the topics: pupil personnel services, school and student health, expanded learning opportunities, home instruction, school counseling, SEL, safe schools, employment of minors. Good. I'm a building principal. I need to know these things, all right? And I don't have a lot of time. I need to know if someone has vetted some of these resources for me. I'm going to go here and I'm going to start. Find out what's required of me, find out what's out there, and just follow the breadcrumbs. See where it leads me at 8:36. There are options, all right? There are options, but I'm just trying to give you a head start. When you're looking for instructional resources, Albany's done some vetting there too. These days, you know, you've got the Google, which really helps you more than anything else. Back to the old days, Jared, we couldn't do what you do now. You know, I've told you before, and I'm not being facetious, we had a dictionary on the desk. You had to go to the library to find the encyclopedia if you want to look something up. And you had a pen, and you had a telephone, and you had a typewriter. That was it. Unless it was in your head or the head of your staff, you just couldn't get your hands on it. You had to go to the library, take the book out if you could find it, get it back in 2 weeks. It was a bitch trying to do the research that you can do now. All right.
I just want to point out that I'm not as young as you might think I am. I think I might be the second oldest person in this entire room right now.
I think you might too, because I misjudged your age too. Jared has good genes, my friends.
Yeah, I'm over 40, so won't tell you how much over 40, but
So if you clicked on back to the state website and went to curriculum, my arrow's a little off, went to curriculum instruction, you're going to wind up in these areas where you're going to find curriculum instruction. And if you clicked on any one of these, if we had time to look around, you're going to start to find related links. And you know just by looking at some of these things that you're in some rich territory here. You know that these associations are going to be doing some work for you. All right. Maybe you've got a group of teachers out there that you want to find new math resources, and you want to at least get them started. You might go to Chelsea's CLC meeting, or you might turn them on to these pages and say, I want you to start looking here and finding XYZ that we need. Albany's going to help you there too. They're not all bad in Albany, not by a long shot. They're good people there. Look at the type of resources you're going to find, all right? You start getting into places like this, National Science Foundation, PBS, NAEP, you know from your experience that you're going to start finding good stuff, all right? It's a head start at 8:39. Student support services. Okay, variety of sources. Okay, tech tools. We're getting close to the end, I think, here. Tech tools have obviously really blossomed over the years. And there's some real sophisticated tools out there to help you manage all the data associated with this type of an effort, all right? When I started this lesson 2 years ago, I simply Googled educational management software, came away with this. So you can use Google to find certain things that are rated. I always recommend that you use your local BOCES, your RIC, your Regional Information Center. All of us are a part of a RIC. In Western New York, it's the Winnie RIC, the Western New York Regional Information Center. Jared on the island near Syosset, your district will belong to a RIC as well. They're regional. There's only 11 of them across the state. I don't know what your RIC is, but the RICs pay attention to technology. That's their focus. Now, what they do for us is that they respond to our needs. If we say we need a student management system that will capture all the demographic data for students, they'll prepare a request for proposal, send it out to vendors. Vendors will send them their products. They will put together committees made up of you and me, and then they will vet those products, and the ones that are good, you can then purchase through BOCES. If you need Brian's athletic scheduling software, you tell BOCES, they will vet it, make it a bit, you don't have to buy it from them, but you can buy it from them. If you need something to manage your curriculum, instruction, and assessment, if you need something to manage your teacher evaluation systems, if you need something to collect and sort data on your STAC system, your special ed kids, if you need financial software, if you need CBT, whatever software you need, the RICs can do it for you. Call up your RIC. Look at their catalogs and find out what they've got. I've just listed here their categories: arts and ed, automated notification, business ed, cafeteria management, cloud computing, da-da-da-da-da. It goes on and on. The nice thing about it is that you get BOCES aid on it, all right? You do cost-benefit analysis because they throw additional costs in there. You do cost-benefit analysis, but it tends to be worth it. Anything you need. And then you're going to wind up with BOCES provided student management systems, e-school. They don't just offer one. I think the RICs right now in our region, WinSchool, e-school, Power School, Schoolology. I mean, they just go on and on. Kelly, can you confirm that?
Yeah, I've used eSchool, Power School, eDoctrina. Would we call that a student management?
Yeah, we're going to go to that. That's more of a curriculum instruction assessment management system. The other was our student management systems.
Yeah, I've used Schoology, Google Classroom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very
I
good.
believe my district uses Infinite Campus.
Yep, another one. That's a student management system. Well, is it? I don't know. Jared, is it a student management system?
It is student management.
Very good. And you can see what it is. It's your demographic collection places. It's where you're collecting all of your student data, including demographic data. Remember the types of data? You're collecting your student demographic data. You're collecting your student achievement data. All right, all of it's being dumped into your student management system, which eventually is what is being pushed into the RIC, who's eventually massaging it and sending it up to Albany through the portal. All right, so back to management of your curriculum instruction assessment. Yes, eDoctrina is just one of many management systems that are out there, and they're very powerful.
Is the RIC the same as your, like if you have a in-house district tech coordinator or data coordinator?
Entirely different. Your tech coordinator could possibly be a member of a RIC planning committee, but you said the operative word, your in-house people are your people. The RICs are regional. They could serve 30, 50 or more school districts.
So even if you have an in-house person, it still gets pushed into BOCES and their system.
As I was saying, the student data, yes, if that was your question, yes. Because it's got to go to an intermediary first, and that's the RICs. Because there's certain ways Albany wants the data. Because they've created all these boxes, and you can only fit certain things in certain boxes. All right. So back to alignment, Jared. We have to have alignment. Our local data systems have to be aligned with the BOCES data systems. Have to be aligned with the Albany data systems. They're all aligned, so that they can talk to each other. Pretty sophisticated system. Back to curriculum instruction assessment alignment. Yes, Kelly mentioned eDoctrina. It's one of the more powerful ones. It has systems like a curriculum bundle. Inside the curriculum bundle, you can find curriculum functions that help you with your curriculum mapping, writing your scope and sequence reports, your unit planning, your lesson planning, your power standards, back to what Chelsea helped us with earlier. Chelsea, do you know anyone who's using eDoctrina to good effect?
No, I wanted to look into that more. Like, I don't know if anyone's using it kind of behind the scenes that I'm just not sure of, but in our region, I don't think anyone is using.
Yeah, take it with a grain of salt. Kelly has a lesson for you.
We use eDoctrina in Kenmore quite a bit with our unit assessments. A lot of our local exams, they all get pushed into, I'll use eDoctrina. It's actually really convenient, and it's nice to be able to get that pieces of data right away.
Yeah, I'm going to mention that in a moment because there is an assessment bundle. Thanks, Brian. I'm sorry, Nate, for confirming that. Kelly, you had some words of wisdom.
Oh, not actually. I had to learn how to use eDoctrina last year. It seems like it would be a really great system, but it's just a place where we throw our assessments, and I don't know, but I honestly don't think anyone touches them after that. So I don't think it's being used for anything.
Yeah, it's very powerful, and it takes a heavy front end use to make it work. And when the vendor comes out, they'll send their power users out, and they'll wow you with all the bells and whistles things you can do, and then you get in front of it and realize, oh my God, we're going to need a special department just to handle this. So be careful. But you heard a success story from Nate, because assessment bundles tend to be the ones that people use best, because they've decided that they're going to have locally developed formative or summative assessments. They've collaborated and decided every 10 weeks, every fourth grade teacher is going to administer this particular test. It doesn't have to be the same test. So they've developed specific approved test items, questions that a teacher can pull from. It's all in here. They've all been vetted. They're approved. Sometimes teachers are not good test writers, test creators, but you can have a committee whose job it is to come up with these assessments that people can simply pull off the shelf. Nate, have I kind of described that quickly as what it looks like for you? Yeah, there you go. So it's a good place to start. What you can also do there too, they have this here, the add-ons. You can use add-ons for, oh, you can get report cards coming out of there. But also here, you can do your observations. Your APPR observations you can capture those here too. So just be careful, because we're here at the end. Just be careful with some of these products. They can be very good if you have, back to the word capacity, if your district has the capacity, all right, to get it done. Nate's fortunate. It appears that they've done the necessary legwork to build in the capacity, and now they find that the ease of use is relatively, it's acceptable. They're using it. All right. All right. That was my attempt to make you smarter than you were just 90 minutes ago. I don't know if I succeeded or not, but I dare say you know more now than I did in 1982 when they gave me the keys to a high school and said, go ahead, run this baby. All right? 8:49. You can write to Dr. Bird. You're due a bit of a refund. We didn't go to 9 o'clock. I got to tell you again how much I appreciate that you're willing to spend this extra time with me. You don't have to do this, but you choose to. I love spending my time with you. I'll see you next week unless you've got questions.